That's easy. Cool. Hey guys, my name is V, or I should have put that up. Just the capital V, basically. I'm a developer. I run a company as well. We do products, and I'm just here to talk about React versus Vue. How many over here know or have heard of Vue.js? How many over here have tried Vue.js? How many over here have been curious of Vue.js but never got a chance to try Vue.js? There you go. Sweet. Again, like when I came to these talks, everyone before Vue was, sorry for the comparison, was like the blockchain back in like 6 months ago. I was like, oh, I want to try Vue, but I never tried it because I'm in React, etc., etc. Just know there will be 1 or 2 blockchain jokes in here just because it's part of it. We have to. Sweet. So I'll just jump straight into it. I won't bore anyone because I know we're hitting 7:41. It's a really cool talk right after this. Mine's cool as well. So the stats, the general stats for Vue.js. It works. Sweet. 23 kilobytes gzipped, HTML, JavaScript. It's open source, developed by a team of 16, as to Facebook and Angular that have dedicated companies. There's a really, really cool guy called Evan Yu, who is ex-Meteor. For those who have used Meteor, don't worry, it's not like Meteor, it's a lot better. And for those who are like, oh, cool, Vue's there, but we really love React because of React Native, which is why I love React as well. Weeks, which is basically the equivalent of React Native, is being built by the teams at Alibaba. So really looking forward to that, and you should too, because it's pretty much just Vue on mobile phone, much like React with React Native. Cool. So main rundown. It's kind of similar to React and kind of similar to Angular, unfortunately. Sorry, I'm sorry. I used to code Angular. Think of it as Vue and React had a really, really smart baby. Angular had a smart baby. And like that baby was cooler than their dad and mom. So that's basically Vue, right? It's Vue or Vue. I say Vue because when I say Vue to a client, they just get confused and start laughing. So it's template based. It's reactive everywhere. So observables everywhere, right? You can communicate the state. You don't need to worry about a lot of things, and everything is kind of taken care of for you. A lot of helper attributes. What I mean by that is think of Vue as Lodash for JavaScript. Cool? It makes things that you didn't need to do prior to. Follow the traditional HTML, JavaScript, CSS, so it's a little less invasive for people who are kind of scared to get into React because of JSX, which I don't think you should, because React's great with JSX. It makes a lot of sense. It's a lot more declarative and componentized, and buzzword entry here. It uses props, right? As to most other libraries that don't, it uses props, which is really, really cool. Follows the whole mentality of templates and so on and so forth. So how does a Vue file actually look like? For those who can see, hopefully you can. You have the top part, which is a template. It's nothing but HTML. You have a script tag, which is basically a JavaScript. Ignore the export default and all that stuff. And you have a couple of attributes that you export. You have your props, you have your watchers, your method, your data, and your computed values. Also, data over here is basically the equivalent of state. I'm going to try my best and explain Vue.js to you in React, because that's a point of this. Just note, they're in no forms competing. They actually complement each other really well, and a lot can be learned about React from Vue and Vue from React in terms of principles and paradigms and patterns. Some might be anti-pattern to React, some might be anti-pattern to Vue, but it's honestly dependent on what you feel best suits your requirement. Sweet. So to start off with, Vue basically, I feel like I can teach you guys Vue in like 15 minutes, so I'm going to try my best. Vue basically starts off with something called directives, which are, better way put, it's a kind of special token that's put up in the markup that tells the library to do something to a DOM element. So you know how in React, if we have a value, we comb it with curly brackets and say, if this, do an and statement and put a DOM element or another React element, or do a ternary operator, or something of that sort, which renders a different method. With Vue, you can do something like if true, else do something else. And that data attribute over there is the equivalent of our state. So much like React, which has each component has its own state, each Vue template or component has its own state. Does that make sense? Cool. That is a really good response. I usually don't get that. Sweet. This is why I kind of like Vue. Like when I saw this, I was like, oh my god, this is it. So with React is really cool. You map through stuff in JavaScript and you make it happen. With Vue, you do another directive. So assume that your data over here is your, see there you go, oh my god, Bitcoin. You see your data over there is basically your state, which has items over there. If you want to print out a loop of items, you just put a directive to your li element, say v-4 item, which represents either React, B, cool, but oh my god, Bitcoin, in items, and then those handlebars. You don't need to do handlebars. This is not Node. Don't be scared. That's just its way of doing or injecting JavaScript variables into a markup. Is that cool? Sweet. Much like React initially, Vue has its own router. It's not like React Router 4, which is really, I like it. Some people don't. Vue router is much like React Router 3 and below. It follows a state-based route. It listens to changes in the URL and then renders different elements based on that. It can either be a stack or a hash, whatever it is that works best for React Router I haven't seen inside. But what you have on the left is React Router 4. And what you have on the right is basically Vue. So as you see, it's pretty much path and component, much like how React Router 3 and below is. How many of you here use React Router 3 in the company, or 3 and below? How many of you use React Router 4? Cool. Hipsters. You should be in Surrey Hills. State in Vue. That's where my company just had to put that out. State in Vue. So, hello. Change. I think we lost internet. Next minute console log error. Hold on, I'm just gonna try to refresh that and see why. Oh, looks like internet's out. Oh, what? Okay, I thought that was a domino BYO, no domain BYO. Give me a second. I might have to just. Okay, so that's not working, so give me a second. I'll probably do something and get out of this. This is awkward. Oh, cool. I can do from here. Sweet. Sweet. State in Vue. State is directly mutated. You usually have async mutation with React. With Vue.js, it's direct mutation, observables. Pub subsystem, so it's pretty much just subscribe to changes, and changes are reflected using a watcher. I'll show a more informative diagram, but let's say Jess has 240 dreadlock. I'm not too sure. I need to ask him. I thought he's going to be here. But when your component mounts, you want to go ahead and change the state and make that 400. In Vue.js, you can do the same thing. It also provides lifecycle methods, mounted, unmounted. I think. Receive new data, updated, so on and so forth, and you can directly mutate information over there and such. So that's generally how the virtual DOM works with Vue. Also, by the way, Vue also has the reconciliation algorithm that React has. So it compares the DOM to the previous DOM, so on and so virtual DOM, and make sure that it's fast. So make some changes, watch your listens, you have your getters and setters, notifies the watcher, and it triggers a re-render, and then that loads the new information. Much like how React works. Some extent, I think. Don't hit me if I'm wrong. Sweet. So computed values. So what a computed value is nothing but a reactive derived value. Let's say I have my first name, which is what's up, and last name mate. If I were to go ahead and have a computed value. What a computed value does is it calculates the derived value of two items. So this is our first name and this is our last name, and prints that out for us. So then a computed value, as you can see, is a kind of looks like a function, but it basically acts as a memoized function that receives information and lets you respond based on the data that it depends upon. So if this our first name or last name changes, then the first, this full name is recalculated and shows the latest value. I'll do a very quick demo based on how we go with time. Sweet. Does that make sense? Yes? Cool. So watchers and methods. So let's say, so that's another derivative. We have v-model. The name is maintained to the context of that template. So you don't need to do this.name because it's markup. All you have to do is you have a watch attribute again to the entire Vue.js object and say, so another Bitcoin thing. Sorry, I didn't see I put there. So whenever someone types into the model, there's a change that happens to the name attribute, and it's invoked with this.buyBitcoin. So then you go ahead and buy Bitcoin. If you did that, you'd be broke. But yeah, that's pretty much how simple it is. You listen to a watcher. You have your model. A Vue model is much like a React Angular model. It's two-way binding. Cool. Plugins. I'll sort of let the slide read for itself. You can add global methods. You can go ahead and do things like adding component options by global mix-ins. You can add new things to the Vue instance, so you can access certain methods across. So instead of importing maybe a modal element everywhere across the application, you can just add it as a plugin and then use that across the app. So instead of doing import modal la-di-da in React, you can just do less than modal, close the bracket, so on and so forth. And that modal element is accessible throughout the app. So you're sort of registering something to your Vue object, like a React object. Don't do that in React. I don't think you should. So how does that look like? See the Vue router over there? That's basically a plugin. It's much like React router. With React router, we do this.props.children. So whenever we are meant to inject information into that section. So with Vue, React router 3 at least. So with Vue, you just have a Vue router, which is a plugin that says anything that has to do with the Vue router that we saw at the first slide is going to be shown over here. I did the blob thing to show that you can have templates that have templates, much like React. Components have components have components have components. Cool. Custom events. This is what I really like about Vue and don't like as well, because it makes it really difficult to maintain large-scale applications. You can pretty much go ahead and emit and listen to events across the board. So with Redux and modals, for example, one project that we were working on with the client, they really wanted their modal to be controlled by Redux and have only one instance of a modal. So we had to use Redux to maintain the modal state because they wanted it. With this, what you can do is just emit events and listen to events across the application and have an if statement that just opens the modal and closes the modal based on what that value is, open modal, close modal. And this is your modal component and goes ahead and loads information based on whether the open modal value is open or closed. And this can be controlled across the application. You just need to emit an event. So you can see it can get quite dirty quickly if you don't maintain your sort of principles or patterns across, because people can start just coming in and trolling and saying, I'm going to emit an event every single time I want to, and you don't know where that's coming from. You have your Vue debugger, much like React DevTools. You have Vue DevTools, but obviously needs a little bit, it's really good, but definitely can be improved. As the open source community comes in, it's going to get better and better. This.props.children is not cool. This is the only thing I will say about React. I love React, but when I saw the slot system that Vue had, I was like, oh my God, this is great. It's sort of self-explanatory. I'd love for you guys just to look into it and sort of understand what's happening. So that's your main component, and that's the parent markup, and this is a resultant of that. So as you can see, you can name target values of children into your component itself. So you can actually target information that's going into a child component. I don't know whether React 16 does that. I haven't looked too deep into it, but this does that. So I really liked it because sometimes it was just more so convenience factor. I like to know that I could do this, so I was like, cool, this works really well. Last part is, how many of you have heard of MobX? How many of you have tried MobX? How many of you like MobX to Redux? I mean, kind of. I mean, depends. If you have a large-scale project that's 3 months long, stick to Redux. If it's shorter, just use MobX. It's just easier, quicker to set up. But Vuex is very similar, kind of similar to MobX. I haven't used MobX a lot, but I've used Vuex a lot, and I love it. It's really cool. So what is it? It's just a state management pattern library. This is literally from the website. It serves as a centralized store for all the components in an application with rules ensuring that you can mutate the state in a predictable manner, much like what Redux does, right? It enforces some rules for you to follow, so when you have a large-scale application, you know what exactly is changing your parent state. I like Vuex because, okay, how many of you here use Thunk for your, cool. How many of you here use refetched? No one. Good. Don't. How many of you here use Redux sagas? Cool. So you know, if you have Redux sagas, if I want to make a button upvote something, I need to go ahead and connect it. Then I need to emit a request. Then I need to have a worker that listens to the request. I have a listener that listens to the request, that invokes a worker. That worker then goes ahead and changes something and then sends out another action saying, oh, cool, I've just done that. And then you have one happen. Now imagine explaining 1 day's worth of work to a client saying, oh, if you press one, that one happens. That's why you paid money, right? So I like sagas again, but it's purely dependent upon how large your application is, and I'm not the one to judge. So what Vuex does is it creates, like I said, Vuex is pretty much just a well thought out child, right? Like a very planned child. So like they really calculated this when they're like, all right, we're going to do this. This is what this is going to make. And so with Vuex, if you want to change things in the state, then you use something called mutations, right? That directly mutates your state. If you want to go ahead and make an asynchronous call to the backend, fetch some data back, you use actions. So the actions go ahead and fetch data, and the mutations, or actions do something that's asynchronous, and mutations go ahead and mutate the state. That's pretty much all it does. And much like our React and Redux or React and MobX interaction, Vuex works in a very similar way. You can derive data from a large-scale Vuex store and go ahead and publish information as well. So yeah, that's Vuex. If I have, how many minutes do I have left, Jed? But like 4 minutes? 4 minutes, cool. I'm going to challenge myself and see whether I can do a tiny little Vue app for you guys in 4 minutes and get your sort of mind on how long you think it would take in React. Live coding. Shooting myself. Cool. Adam. So with Vue, you actually get like a CLI that does all of this stuff for you. Now, what I want to do is go ahead and create a list of information. So I'm going to go ahead. You guys can hear me without this, right? Yeah, cool. All right, so I have 3 minutes. I'm going to delete this hello world thingamajig. So if I delete that and save it, what's going to happen? Sweet, that goes away. Now I want to go ahead and add a list over here. I'm going to copy paste code just because we want to be quick. So I went ahead and added a state over here. Cool. So that's my state that returns an object. I have item and list. Hi, how are? Cool. Does nothing right now. Our app's pretty straightforward. Now I want to go ahead and add an input. I want to add an input value that basically has a model of item. So I'll just remove this over here and put that in a bit. So now that model item is respective to the item over here. So any change that I make here automatically change the state. Sweet. Now I want to add a method that basically goes ahead and adds, I want to print this list of data out. So what do? I just create a UL over here. I go ahead and do that. So I'll say, well, not in Bitcoin list. Just do list. List item in list equals list item. Save that and see. Hopefully that works. Sweet. So hi, how are? Do that. That exactly doesn't do much. Now I want to go ahead and add this to my item, so to my list. So how do I do that? I'll say when I key up on my input, I want to go ahead and invoke a method. So the add attribute is a listener that says v on. It's much like a directive that says listen for key up events. And when there's a key up event of enter, no longer 13. See, tiny things that really make you, right? You appreciate it.
Should it go into input?
Sorry?
Should it go into input, not li?
Oh, sorry. Whoopsie. I love you. You correct me every single time. The best. Yeah, so it goes straight into input, and it invokes a function called add to list. Add to list is not defined. It's a method. So let's go ahead and create a method. We're almost done. So what I'm doing over here is saying this.list, which is this list over here, destructure it, add the item, and make it empty. So if I do save, da-da-da, woo, woo, cool. Nice and easy, done. Now I want to say the last tiny tweak over here. I'm like, I want to go ahead and say, oh my God, Bitcoin's great at the end of every item. So how do I do that? I want to make the list reactive or computed. So I want it to respond to new changes that I make. So I'll make a computed value. What the computed value does, called Bitcoin list, it just takes my list, maps it, and adds, oh my God, Bitcoin to the end of it. Right? So now instead of listening to list, I'm just going to listen to Bitcoin list, save that, and hi, oh my God, Bitcoin, hi, oh my God, Bitcoin. So if I say, I know, right? Oh my God, Bitcoin. So automatically adds that, and that's Vue.js, nice and easy. Hope you guys liked it. Thanks again. My name's Z. Any time for quick questions or none?
I was done in 3 minutes. You've got 1 minute to go.
Oh, cool. Any questions for 1 minute? You guys are great. No questions. Yes, hi.
Have you checked out the server-side rendering?
Yes, it's quite supported. It's supported well. It's like I said, it's a well thought out baby. So they've thought through how it works. It's more so the CLI that they provide, which is like the Create React app. It's called Vue CLI. Handles pretty much everything for you over there. So it's good. It does its job right, which is why I could spin that up really quickly. So a lot of this stuff, I didn't need to exactly know what was happening in the backgrounds with the config files, with none of this. What is this? I don't know what this is. But yeah, I didn't know much of the stuff. It sort of took care of a lot of things for me. Must have Create React app. Yep. Any other questions? Cool. Oh, yes.
Is it possible to opt out of two-way data binding?
You just don't use a model. You end up using watchers.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, you can get out of it and just use watchers, or there are various other ways you can do it. So the cool thing about Vue is you get the magic. If you don't know magic, go to the nitty-gritty stuff. So you get an option of the two. Cool. Any questions? Awesome. Thank you.